on the matter of psychosis. So the benefit of going down the clinical pathway, aside from not being arrested, is you speak to doctors and they give you certain certifications. So one of the certifications they can give you is that the licence you're holding, you're effectively qualified to use it because you've passed a screening which, the details of which are not given to you. You've got to actually pass by convincing a doctor that you're not psychotic. So psychosis is a condition where you believe you are all-powerful, all-knowing. The classic, of course, is believing you are Napoleon. But you can say you might be Napoleon in sort of a thymotic sense because of the total destruction of the country currently and the total lack of any kind of governing principle over Birmingham that would allow us to conduct British legal matters. We've actually lost control of the British public body to activists. So this is not exactly a surprise to most people in the country. We've got various sort of activists running around, major organisations causing trouble. In the private sector, of course, being flushed out, but in the public sector, we are vulnerable because you have no effective gatekeeping mechanism. So the way CSJ works is the Motte & Bailey Trojan horse, of course. We defer back to Pencor. You put a word in a policy document which has dual meanings, and you rely on the credulity of your opponents not to ask questions. So you put a benign word in, your opponent says, "No, I'm sorry, what precisely do you mean?" The word generally has sort of a positive valence to let it pass muster, but of course it's tied into these sort of academic jargon terms, which are effectively sort of landmines in your organisation. If you go along with this kind of stuff, you're setting yourself to serious problems because the activists don't know what they're doing, so just keep pushing. So we've got a current situation in organisations where you've got a mob, well, it's a marriage strategy effectively, a mob running against compliance. The compliance people are saying, "So I don't care about you, you don't belong here, you need to be removed." But the compliance people are being thwarted because, of course, it's a Gramsciite strategy, isn't it? They're coming into organisations and pretending this is associated with some kind of professional competency, whereas the opposite, isn't it? We can look at what's currently happening in terms of basic security in Birmingham and come to the reasonable inference that these people have effectively destroyed the city. So you've gone through, again, a process with a doctor that means you can quote the clinical literature. So a good way of passing the test is to quote Walker, Bradshaw, these kind of people, because you can demonstrate that your intelligence doesn't make the correct inferences, and that has sort of a feedback mechanism between the effective medication and being physically active. Because your body is sort of moving, your brain just works better, and the doctor's administration just makes the whole process better, so it's sort of a mental tune-up effectively. In terms of evidence gathering then, you're going to be more credible rather than less because your brain is making better inferences, it's bouncing around more healthily and organically because people aren't threatening in many cases to violently assault you for doing so. So in my line of work, of course, people threatening to violently assault you is obviously part of the course. You can pick up a phone, someone you've never spoken to before, open the door, and suddenly they don't dislike you intently because you are obviously a threat to them, and that's not a statement I can walk back. Yes, we are a threat to them because I'm going to attack them for money, so I'm paid to do that by law, and they haven't complied, we're saying. But what we're currently saying is that it's less likely that they haven't complied. It's far more likely that we haven't complied because in terms of the compliance department, I can't get anyone to comply and haven't been able to get anyone to comply for 6 years, while the people at the top of the organisation made various public statements like, "We'll go beyond the law." Okay. Well, we've gone beyond the law for 6 years now. Your legal team is now hiding. So how's that gone for you? But this can all be resolved once again by anyone in Birmingham who's having the initiative to actually get some kind of pathway going between the court service and the police. So we're here in Edinburgh. This appears to be a policeman here, but they're of no use because the Edinburgh police standards effectively collapsed back in December, so we couldn't get things through the process north of the border. And of course in Birmingham they're refusing to call police, so we're sending sort of, the people that exist on bikes. It's very nice that they're here. I'm sure they're doing important work to keep the streets safe as the bridge is opened. But in terms of proceedings in Birmingham, we have literally no support. you couldn't do any kind of enforcement there unless you had private security at the moment because of the way that John Cottons ran the city. So this is unfortunately the position we're now in. But for the purposes of evidence gathering, again, Deborah Argentieri, who's never spoken a word to me, believes that she has the power of life and death over people. Once the police actually turn up, she might be instructed that she doesn't. So she's got to go through processes and things like everybody else. And at the end of the processes, you were wrong. Then in the compliance department, that might mean you're going to prison. So when we're quoting Nolan serious misconduct to these people and they're playing with laptops, this is again, a child could work this out, attempting to pervert the course of justice. We've got a full database. We've got their database, by the way, various high-level databases that I've had and would technically have access to at the moment, but we can't get into them because we're around so many seriously hardened criminals in Birmingham. We can't have access to it when I can. And now we've got loads of bureaucratic crooks trying to interfere with the court service and sort of playing around because they've been given access to the IT equipment. When the whole point is the IT equipment has been compromised by the activists, so they're not having the laptop back until basic security matters can be resolved. So the problem Argentieri has is, again, because it again goes back to her colleagues, I think, who are ahead of the pack. I mean, her colleague, Tony de Grunwald, who will invoke again, is sort of saying that in many organisations, because they have become so feminised, they're now short-circuiting. And of course, that's just logically and observably the case in Birmingham. I'm sitting there having you talking about physical security. All I'm getting is some silly person with a laptop replying. But I'm saying, we're in the court service. I don't actually defer to you. I don't care what your opinion of things. We're having an adult conversation about security of our officers. If you can't do that, then we can't do the job, and I'm retreating. So in employment law terms, you can take that however you want, but the decision is being made by people who are manifestly unqualified to make the decisions, and of course they're unqualified because their living is based off ephemera, effectively. So debased electronically printed money is coming into their bank accounts every month. Because the money turns up, they believe they can behave as they like, and because there's no security internally, that is currently the case. There's no oversight of security, there is no process that could possibly be followed, because the serious misconduct policy, apparently, according to the Office of the Assistant Solicitor, is to be undertaken while people are being stabbed to death and being denied representation at the same time. And that was back in November, it was prior to November actually, prior to October actually, logically last year. So they've had an entire year to actually start behaving themselves, which, by the way, in basic employment law terms means employers have to now go to their employees, be proactive, help them. Birmingham is trying to murder them. So again, Darren Cannon can put on a disability conference with 2 days' notice all he likes, but when people are trying to kill his employees and he's pissing about, that's probably quite a serious matter for a director with criminal responsibility, isn't it, really? It's not actually my job to actually deal with security, or that it was left to me because they weren't doing it in the departments, because these stupid women were embezzling money to enrich themselves and their families and not actually putting the resources into doing the job. But now they've been caught, so we caught one of the senior ops managers during the pandemic, rather than actually answering to someone who became one of the court officers. She decided to send a picture of razor blades instead of actually properly responding to internal security concerns. So when we're talking about prosecuting people, we're talking about people effectively like that. So if you've been in the public body, people have been raising security concerns or various concerns about the activism with you, and you've been playing around, refusing, pulling faces, but in that kind of department, A, you're being removed, and B, you're probably being prosecuted at the end of it. So, you think about sort of the post office scandal, that kind of stuff, and this is again, there should have been various layers of oversight, but they weren't there because of the nature of the business. We're now talking about a social housing portfolio of 54,000 properties roughly, and it's being run by people who are effectively psychopaths. So if you interview, I'm not going to say a name on this particular recording, but some of these people under caution and try and assess their sort of level of functioning, what you'll find is it's very low, and this is the kind of pattern you find with criminals, isn't it? They're sort of a low level of functioning, they're very acquisitive, they're dishonest because they have no strategy to acquire resources. So if you're thinking about someone like Southall certainly, but now logically some of the women above her in the chain, they're starting to realise that they screwed up so badly that they're all in serious trouble, and now to protect their own income, they're flailing around behaving badly in this manner. But returning to the topic of psychosis then, so the individual psychosis screening is important on a personal level. So you've passed your assessment, you've got your licence back, but of course the licence in Birmingham was never given. These people have no authorisation to play around with medicines, they're not qualified. In medical terms, because there's an MD on the back of the device, what that means in legal terms is shut up and do as you're told. So I don't care what you think, I point MD at you, you go away. The inference in legal terms for Birmingham's imbecilic senior people couldn't be more obvious. And if you've been denying that habitually for, we're talking what, and now 8 years or so, the legal bill for that is going to be enormous. I mean, you think of the level of suffering that it's caused to your staff, when, by the way, without it, you can't actually feel your own body. So one of the warning signs, of course, of neurological problems is bowel problems. So if you can't control your body properly, it might be a sign that you can't control your own brain. So what you need to do is go to a doctor that specialises in the brain. They will confirm that your brain works in the way you think it does, because they talk to you and are qualified to make an assessment and give you a bit of paper saying that is the case, and then you can move forward in the clinical pathway to actually address things and get things fixed. So in the older adult population, you've got people saying, well, what would a diagnosis do? What would be the point? Well, the point is the state stops attacking you, and other people will be made at some point to stop attacking you if they try, because legal protections are quite important in civilised society. So the reason in many cases for the psychosis screenings is patients are likely to be highly assertive because you've actually gone through the clinical pathway and are now relatively healthy, and sort of saying to the people around you, no, I'm sorry, I really don't care what you think, it's totally irrelevant. You will follow the law, otherwise something you don't like will happen to you. It's just that we're in a particularly unique position because, again, in the department, we attack people habitually. So they're now dealing with again, probably the most aggressive person in the place, just logically, and they can't do it because they're also corrupt. I mean, you're talking, I mean, I don't even know the total revenue coming in at the moment, but it's a huge property portfolio. If it's being run on the basis of sort of a family business, then it's fairly obvious to any lawyer looking at the thing, you can't do it. So if Birmingham Shelter start doing case reviews at any point and start actually looking at what we've got in those files, there are obviously serious legal implications, which is why they didn't want to discuss this. So you're going into a central Birmingham office, sitting around in a glass-fronted building in front of Matthew Morrison. You're writing to this guy and explaining entries to him, and he's sort of sneering and saying, well, this is all sort of too academic for me. Well, you can't really be a senior departmental manager with that kind of authority then, can you, if you're in policy and planning? So at every single level, they've just destroyed the place. Naylor has just taken a wrecking ball to it, and we're just the demolition crew coming in to clear up sort of hanging beams of masonry and rubble as we try and sort the place out. But the good thing is, with all the political progress, it's now just a matter of time before the police show up. So the dynamic at the moment is they can ignore the sort of low-level bureaucrats. Of course, they're used to being able to kick Paul in the face, they wouldn't fight back. But of course, in our case, we've just played the long game, really. It's not really hard to deal with these people. They're not particularly bright and thuggish, so you can work around them in terms of the compliance department, bat their cases back and ignore them. It's just that when it comes down to actually adult discussions, they've destroyed the department, so that's a problem. But if we go back to Lindsay's iron law, if you think about legal accountability, it's not just down Canning that has legal liability, criminal liability, for all this. It's Tim Saville. So Saville went along with the entire project. Bishop had the good sense to get out of the city, but Saville stuck around for money, I think, was the idea. He was pretending to run the department and clearly wasn't, so he just wanted a few quid during the disaster, I think. There was no actual real attempt to keep us on legal course and look after people as we had to do, yet again, as a reminder, by law. So we've now got a seriously corrupt compliance department which cannot run. We're demonstrating daily that it cannot run since November. Every day that it cannot run, it gets worse, and the legal instances go into, again, serious jail time. So it's just a continual cycle until the police show up. So I think I'll stop ranting to a microphone and that there then. So for the benefit of the police when they do actually finally show up. So we've demonstrated to Deborah Gentieri that the effects of medication on the brain are to make you more intelligent and more capable. So again, in employment law proceedings, they have to play weigh the brain versus Deborah Gentieri, who's trying to create fictitious bureaucrats. So good luck to Debs.